Trump says he's running a campaign of positive solutions to save America. Kamala Harris is running a campaign of hate. The timing of all of this political dust-up is really critical. Early voting is happening in a number of states already, has been. Polls open 6 days from now, and words matter, especially for people right now on the fence, conflicted about who they're going to cast their vote for. Joining us now, political analyst Jonathan Alter. He's also the author of the new book, American Reckoning, where he writes about being inside the courtroom for Trump's hush money trial in New York. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here. How are you doing 6 days out?
I'm doing great, Marni. Thanks for having me on.
So in a recent op-ed I was reading, you wrote the joke at the Trump rally about Puerto Ricans was a costly mistake for the Trump campaign. Does Biden's comments cause the same damage to Kamala Harris as the comedian's jokes, in your mind, did to Trump's campaign?
No. So Biden made a stupid comment. It's the reason why it's a good thing he's not running for president. He's too old, and he says dumb things sometimes. But this is not in the same category, because what's happening out there in the Puerto Rican community is that Trump is hemorrhaging support. And you see it all over Pennsylvania. We're hearing it from other states. And there are, there were 1.2 million Puerto Ricans who came here after Hurricane Maria. Not all of them vote, but a fair number of them do, as they were entitled to do when they were living in Puerto Rico. It had been some time, 7 years since that hurricane, when Trump was very unpopular in the Puerto Rican community for, remember, he tossed those towels, and he did not respond in what the Puerto Ricans considered to be an appropriate fashion. Meanwhile, Harris went to Puerto Rico in March. She's been actively courting the Puerto Rican vote. She was actually, by coincidence, at a Puerto Rican restaurant when that comedian said that racist thing about Puerto Ricans. So this is a real problem for the Trump campaign. Not a fatal problem, but a genuine political problem in the last week before the election. And Joe Biden saying something stupid is not a big problem for Kamala Harris.
You've got critics, John, who will say there is a double standard. I think we can put a pin in it now. I think the bigger issue, though, is that Trump has said lots of outlandish, kind of crazy things leading up to the 2016 election, between 2016 and 2020, and to date. But he's Teflon, right? He's been able to say and get away with things that others haven't. Why would this be any different? And this wasn't even him who said it.
That's a good point, and it might be that it doesn't. We won't know until we see exit polls with Puerto Rican voters. But I actually, when I wrote that piece in the New York Times, I didn't think it would be that big of a deal for the reasons that you just explained. But it's so late in the campaign, and what it did was it, at least with a certain number of Puerto Rican voters, and remember, we're talking about a game of inches here, it reminded them that he had done a bad job during Hurricane Maria, and that they hadn't forgotten about it, but it wasn't front and center for them. That he really, he wasn't a very good president. Historians unanimously rated him the worst president in American history, and his response to hurricanes was just one in a long bill of particulars where he did not perform well. COVID would be another example. So when something like this happens, even if it's not out of the candidate's mouth, late in a campaign when people are finally paying attention, it can, I'm not saying it will, but it can have a significant effect in a race this close.
John, you've been covering politics for a long time. You've spoken and interacted with a lot of presidents and former presidents, and you've called yourself an idealist who deeply cares about America, and you've done that over your career. You also recently said that you've been a skeptical journalist and not a cynical one. I'm curious now, in this moment in 2024, if that still feels true or if the line has blurred.
Well, I'm not a cynic. I believe in this country. I believe in its institutions. I'm heartbroken by Donald Trump's attacks on our precious institutions, on our ideals, and on the ideals of the founders. And so this is what my book is about. I've long defined myself as John F. Kennedy defined himself, as an idealist without illusions. And I'm still an idealist, but I realize I had more illusions than I thought I did, because this race should not be this close. This man, if you have the former chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, his former White House chief of staff, both senior former military people saying he's a, quote, fascist, people have to wake up and smell the coffee here. It's not, this isn't about taxes or even immigration or any of these other issues. It's about, do we want to elect an authoritarian who he's basically, he's un-American. He doesn't believe in the idea of America. He believes if he's president, he should have all the power. He admires strong men. He's friends with strong men. He wants to be a strong man. And, the reason we fought the American Revolution was to get away from King George III. And that's what Trump wants to be. He has a will to power, and he's pretty close to getting it again. And so I think, my own view is this is not a drill. And we have to decide what kind of society we want to live in, whether we want to have somebody who uses the office for what he describes as retribution, for what he describes as suspending the Constitution, quote unquote, when he thinks it's necessary. That's not the American way. So
but what do you say,
I
Jonathan?
Do I believe democracy is on the ballot in this election? Absolutely.
Right. And many people agree with it. But what do you say to the hundreds of thousands and millions of Trump supporters who believe he is a good American and he is the president who will fight for them and believe that he has and will? Okay,
so first of all, what Biden said about them, what Hillary Clinton said about half of them, her deplorable comment, I think that's deplorable. Like, I think it's really wrong to disrespect voters. But you can respectfully disagree with them. And in this case, I would respectfully disagree with Trump supporters and respectfully submit that they are not looking at really the first principles of our society, which is, I thought Kamala Harris had a good line about this. Trump wants an enemies list. He keeps talking about getting retribution against the enemy from within. He says that his political rivals are worse than China and Russia. Think about that. So he wants an enemies list, and she has a to-do list. Now you can go, all right, well, why didn't she get more of it done when she was vice president? The answer is vice presidents have no power. Hello? Mike Pence had no power. She had no power. So to hold her accountable for Biden's failings, I think is wrong. But on the big issue, which is she wants, as she said last night, she wants to bring her political opponents in to consult with her, to hear their views, so to how to get to better practical solutions for what's wrong with this country. Trump wants to punish his political opponents because he's angry that he was prosecuted. So he wants to get back at any Democrat. He's not only after, Nancy Pelosi, he's after Paul Pelosi. Marni, this is what really got me really upset in the last couple of weeks. So, you remember Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's then 82-year-old husband. He's attacked by a home intruder, skull is fractured with a hammer. When he's still in the hospital, Donald Trump is making jokes about him, making up conspiracy theories about him. This was just, the man is cruel and unfit. And the fact that as recently as last week, he's saying that the enemy from within is not just Nancy Pelosi, that's bad enough, Adam Schiff, the Pelosis. He's still mad at Paul Pelosi. Why? Because his head got in the way of the hammer? So we're talking about a man of seriously poor character. And so what I would say to people who are thinking about voting for him is just do a gut check. Do we want the chaos, the dysfunction, the toxicity, the ugliness that we have been experiencing, or do we want to turn the page as Harris, whatever her faults are? I don't agree with her on a lot of stuff. Whatever her faults are, she's right that it's just time to put this Trump era in the rearview mirror and get ready for something that could be a more exciting, more positive future. And so I think it's really about these bigger things, not, did Biden fail on immigration? Of course he failed on immigration. That's not what is at stake. As Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a great American, widely respected across the aisle, he said taxes go up, taxes go down. Yeah, that's important. But that's not as important as the fundamental issues of whether you believe in the ideas that this country was founded on. Do you believe in freedom and democracy? And it's very clear that Donald Trump is an authoritarian.
Well,
He might not be a fascist technically, but without question, as a factual matter, he is an authoritarian. And we have to ask ourselves whether we want that in this country that was founded on very different ideas.
Well, two things you said there that are true. This is a gut check, no matter which party you're from and how you're watching this election. Everybody needs to have that gut check when they head to the polls. And two, we have found ourselves in a lack of respect politically. And I think both sides are guilty of that, and words do matter. Jonathan, I'm out of time, but thank you so much. The book, American Reckoning, is out. You were inside the courtroom for that hush money trial. A good read. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.